The little girl's voice trembled as she pressed her tiny hands together, whispering softly, "Dear God, please take care of my papa and mama. They work so hard. Please don't let them fight again tonight." Beside her, her younger brother tried to mimic the gesture, his small fingers fumbling, his voice stammering, "And please, keep them safe." The maid, a woman with weary eyes but a gentle smile, placed her warm, rough hand over theirs. Her voice, filled with the weight of her own unseen battles, steadied them. "Children, when you pray, you're not just asking. You're giving love. You're sending hope into their hearts, even when they don't know it." The two children looked up at her wide-eyed, as though she held the secret to something the world had forgotten. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the night lamp, yet the tenderness in her words made it brighter than the grand chandeliers hanging in the mansion's halls. "Why do you do this with us every night?" the little boy asked curiously. "Papa doesn't care about these things." The maid hesitated. For a moment her smile faltered. Then she bent low, her voice tender but firm. "Because even the strongest men sometimes need someone else's prayers to carry them. And because one day, when you're grown, you'll remember that love isn't just spoken, it's lived." Silence hung heavy in the air. The children's innocence wrapped around her like a shield. But behind her calm face, she hid her own story, one she never spoke of. And just outside the slightly ajar door, a tall figure stood frozen. The billionaire, their father, had been on his way to check if his children were asleep. But what he overheard in those few seconds pierced deeper than any boardroom defeat, deeper than any hostile takeover. For the first time in years, he felt his chest tighten, not from stress, not from power, but from something he had almost forgotten how to feel. He stepped back quietly, unseen, leaning against the wall. His breathing grew uneven. He couldn't understand why these simple words from a maid, spoken to his children, felt like a mirror shattering in his soul. Inside the room, the girl looked at the maid again, whispering, "Do you pray for your parents too?" The maid's eyes glistened. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she brushed the child's hair back tenderly. "Every day," she finally whispered, "even though they're far away now. I still pray they know I never stopped loving them." The little boy frowned. "Are they sick? Or gone?" The maid's smile was brave, but her eyes betrayed the truth of unspoken loss. "They're not gone, child. They're alive in my heart. And that's enough." The billionaire closed his eyes, pressing his hand against the wall for balance. His mind raced. He had given his children everything: golden toys, private tutors, the best schools. Yet never had he given them this: the strength to love beyond what the eye can see. The sound of his daughter's laughter broke his thoughts. "Will you keep teaching us, Nia?" "Yes, little one," the maid whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "As long as I'm here, I will teach you to never forget your parents in your prayers." The billionaire turned away, unable to bear more. His steps echoed in the empty hallway as his heart wrestled with an ache he didn't know how to name. That night, while the mansion slept, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The words replayed in his mind like a haunting refrain. Even the strongest men sometimes need someone else's prayers to carry them. And for the first time in years, the mighty billionaire found himself wondering who, if anyone, had ever prayed for him. The morning sun spilled through the wide glass windows of the mansion, filling the grand dining hall with light. The polished silver cutlery gleamed on the long marble table. Everything looked perfect, as it always did. Yet inside, the billionaire felt far from perfect. His eyes carried the weight of a restless night, though he sat in his sharp-tailored suit as though nothing was wrong. Across the table, his two children giggled softly, whispering to each other. He noticed it, how they leaned toward the maid, who was quietly serving them breakfast with her usual gentleness. They seemed lighter around her, freer, like flowers turning toward the sun. He cleared his throat. "Eat your food properly," he said, his tone firmer than he intended. The children froze, then exchanged glances before silently picking up their forks again. The maid gave him a respectful nod. "They will, sir," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes met his for just a second, steady, unafraid. It unsettled him. After breakfast, as the children ran off toward the garden, the billionaire lingered behind, pretending to scroll through his phone. He wasn't really reading. His eyes followed the maid as she began clearing the table, humming faintly under her breath. A simple tune. It stirred something in him he couldn't quite explain. Finally, he spoke. "What were you doing with them last night?" His voice came sharper than intended, almost accusatory. She paused, setting down a tray. "Teaching them how to pray for their parents, sir." His brow furrowed. "Why? That isn't your job." Her hands stilled, but she didn't bow her head like so many others did around him. She looked at him quietly, respectfully, but with a strength he didn't expect. "Because children need to learn gratitude, sir. They need to know that even the people who seem too busy, too strong, still need love." His jaw tightened. "I give them everything. Don't talk as though they're neglected." Her voice lowered, but it carried more weight than any argument. "Everything money can buy, yes. But children, they also need things money cannot buy, like the comfort of knowing they are part of your heart, not just your legacy." Her words landed like a blow he hadn't seen coming. He looked away, unable to hold her gaze. He didn't respond, only muttered, "Do your work," before walking out, his footsteps echoing too loudly on the marble floor. In the garden, he watched from a distance as the children played. The maid sat with them beneath the wide oak tree, guiding them through a little routine. They closed their eyes, pressed their hands together, and whispered softly. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see the joy on their faces. His son laughed when he got the words wrong, and the maid gently corrected him, her patience unwavering. For a moment he felt like an outsider in his own family, like he was watching something sacred from behind a glass wall, unable to enter. He turned away, frustration burning inside him. Why did her simple acts bother him so much? Why did they make him feel inadequate? That night, after another long day of meetings and deals, he returned home late. The house was quiet, but faint whispers drifted from the children's room again. His steps slowed. He told himself not to look, not to listen, but his feet betrayed him. He found himself standing by the door once more. "And bless Papa," his daughter whispered. "Even when he doesn't have time for us, help him know we love him." The boy added clumsily, "And help him not be angry so much." The billionaire's throat tightened. He gripped the doorframe, fighting the sting in his eyes. He wanted to burst in, to say something, to tell them he wasn't angry, he was just tired, but he couldn't move. The maid's voice followed, steady and tender. "And remember, little ones, your papa's heart is big. Sometimes people forget how to show love because they're carrying too much on their shoulders. That doesn't mean they don't love you." His daughter tilted her head. "But how do we know?" The maid smiled softly, brushing her fingers through the girl's hair. "Because love isn't always in words. Sometimes it's in the sacrifices no one sees. One day you'll understand." The billionaire turned away, his chest heavy, his eyes burning. He walked down the hallway, his footsteps unsteady. He entered his office, shut the door, and sat in the dark. For years he had believed success was the measure of love, that giving his children the best of everything was proof enough. But in that moment, he realized what they truly craved was the one thing he had withheld: himself. The next morning, he rose earlier than usual. He stood at the edge of the children's room, watching them sleep peacefully, their small faces soft in the early light. His hand hovered on the doorframe, but he didn't enter. He couldn't. Not yet. At breakfast, the maid noticed the subtle change in his expression. His eyes lingered longer on his children, softer than before. He even asked his daughter, "How is school?" She nearly dropped her spoon in surprise. The boy grinned and launched into a messy story about his friend's dog. For the first time in years, the billionaire listened, really listened, even though he said nothing. The maid observed silently. She didn't smile, not openly, but inside she prayed. Not just for the children, but for their father too. That evening, when the children tugged at his sleeve, asking, "Papa, can you pray with us tonight?" He froze. His instinct was to refuse, to dismiss it as nonsense, but the look in their eyes disarmed him. The maid stood quietly behind them, not pushing, just waiting. His voice came low, almost broken. "Not tonight. Maybe another time." Disappointment clouded the children's faces, but they nodded. The billionaire turned away quickly, retreating into his office, his heart pounding. He poured himself a drink, but set it down untouched. His reflection in the glass wall stared back at him, powerful, wealthy, yet hollow. He whispered to the empty room, "Why can't I just—" His voice cracked, and he couldn't finish the sentence. For the first time in decades, the billionaire felt like a child himself, unsure, lost, longing for something he couldn't buy. And though he didn't join them that night, a part of him had already begun to change. The maid's words, the children's prayers, their innocence, it was seeping into him, breaking down walls he had built too high for too long. He didn't know it yet, but the cracks had formed, and soon the flood would come. The mansion was quieter than usual that evening. The long corridors, usually filled with the sound of servants moving about, seemed heavy with silence. The billionaire sat alone in his office, the lamp casting a lonely glow across the polished desk. Documents lay scattered, untouched. For the first time, the empire he built with his own hands didn't feel like victory. It felt like a cage. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, hearing his daughter's words echo in his head. "Please bless Papa, even when he doesn't have time for us." And his son's innocent plea, "Help him not be angry so much." Each word pressed into his chest like a knife, cutting deeper than any corporate rival ever could. His throat tightened as memories surged. Nights when he had chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories, contracts over conversations, wealth over warmth. He buried his face in his hands. For years he had convinced himself he was doing it for them, to secure their future, to ensure they never knew hunger or struggle. But in the process, had he starved them of the one thing they truly needed, his presence, his love? A soft knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He quickly wiped his eyes, straightening in his chair. "Yes." His voice was gruff, defensive. The door creaked open, and his daughter peeked in. Her brother stood close behind, both in their pajamas. "Papa," she whispered, "we can't sleep." He blinked at them, startled. "Why not?" His son shuffled his feet. "We were waiting for you." The billionaire froze. "For me?" The little girl nodded. "To pray. You said maybe another time. Can tonight be that time?" His breath caught in his throat. He wanted to refuse again, to say he was busy, to retreat behind the walls he knew so well. But their faces, so hopeful, so trusting, shattered his excuses. He stood slowly, his tall frame suddenly unsteady. "All right," he whispered. "Tonight." The children's eyes lit up as they rushed to take his hands, tugging him gently toward their room. The maid was already there, folding their clothes neatly. She looked up, surprised, when she saw him enter with them. Her gaze softened, but she said nothing. She simply moved aside, allowing the moment to unfold. The children knelt by their small bedside, pressing their hands together. They looked up at their father expectantly. His hands trembled as he tried to mimic their posture, feeling almost foolish. But when his daughter reached out and placed her tiny hand over his, whispering, "It's okay, Papa. Just close your eyes and try," something broke inside him. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, words rose from a place he had buried deep within. "Please, keep them safe, my children. Don't let them grow up thinking I didn't love them, because I do. More than anything." His voice cracked, raw and trembling. "And forgive me for all the times I wasn't here, for all the moments I missed. I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe I was wrong." Tears streamed down his face before he could stop them. His son crawled into his lap, wrapping small arms around his neck. His daughter followed, pressing her cheek against his chest. Their warmth, their innocence, it melted the last of his defenses. The maid stood quietly by the door, her own eyes shining with unshed tears. She had seen many things in her life, but there was nothing as powerful as watching a hardened man finally lay down the armor of pride and let love in. The billionaire clutched his children tightly, whispering through sobs he had never allowed himself to shed. "I'm so sorry for everything. I promise, from today, I'll be better. I'll be here, not just in this house, but with you." His daughter's small voice broke the silence. "That's all we ever wanted, Papa." The room seemed to glow, not from the lamps, but from the love that finally filled it. The maid stepped forward, her voice gentle. "Sir, sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give isn't riches, it's presence. Tonight, you've given them more than all the wealth in the world." The billionaire looked at her, his vision blurred with tears, but his gratitude clear. For the first time, he saw her not as a maid, but as the quiet guardian who had given his children what he could not. He nodded slowly, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for teaching them what I forgot to teach, for saving them, and maybe for saving me too." The maid bowed her head humbly, but her smile carried more power than any fortune. "It wasn't me, sir. It was their love for you. All I did was show them how to express it." Later that night, as the mansion grew silent once again, the billionaire remained by his children's bedside, watching them sleep peacefully, their small breaths steady against the night air. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Not because of the empire he built, but because of the love he had almost lost and just barely reclaimed. He whispered into the quiet, more to himself than anyone else. Even the strongest men sometimes need someone else's prayers to carry them. And that truth would stay with him, not just tonight, but for the rest of his life. Because love, silent, persistent, unyielding, had finally broken him open, only to build him back whole again. And maybe, in your own life, someone close to you is waiting for a simple gesture, a small word, a moment of your presence. Don't let today pass without giving it, because sometimes the smallest act of love becomes the memory that saves a heart forever. If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe to our channel Black Saga, drop a comment, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today.